Hello everyone, I'm Karen Grace Clark, Program Manager of Gold Perinatal Care Online Conference. I'm here today with Dr. Kathleen Kendall Tackett, who is a health psychologist, international board certified lactation consultant, and specialist in women's mental health issues. She's presenting a topic at Gold Perinatal Care Online Conference titled Pharmacologic and Non-Pharmacologic Treatments for Depression During Pregnancy and Lactation. Kathleen, tell me how you became interested in depression in pregnant and lactating women.
Well, as I kind of mentioned before, I mean, my whole sort of venture into perinatal mental health kind of started with my own experience, but it became very quickly kind of more of an academic interest as I started noticing that the literature was saying something very different about depression than what I was seeing kind of like in magazines and people talking about at conferences. You know, for example, they were still focusing so much on the drop in estrogen and progesterone as being the cause, and the literature actually wasn't saying that at all. So I actually, became intrigued enough, I decided to write a book about it, and actually that was my first book. So it was called Postpartum Depression, A Comprehensive Approach for Nurses, that I wrote back in 1992. Now, I've since kind of revised that 2 times. I'm actually just getting ready to do another edition of that. But that's actually, how I became interested in it, just starting with my own experience, but branching out and looking at the research and realizing that there was actually a much more interesting story to tell.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you have several decades worth of experience in this, and it all started from your own personal experiences and then went on from there. So it sounds like you have a wealth of information to share with us. But I have to ask you this. Why would anyone actually take the risk of using medication during pregnancy or while breastfeeding? Like, why bother?
Well, I think one of the things that's very important to know is, first of all, there are other treatment options that actually work as well as medication. So it's never a question of that, either the mother gets antidepressants or she gets no treatment. So we always kind of have to balance that. But for many mothers, medications are really the most appropriate and the best treatment. And, nothing is risk-free. And the thing that you have to kind of remember is that untreated depression is every bit as harmful to that baby as any exposure that they might get with a medication. So again, we need to always be balancing and never be casual about this, because, there is a risk. It's a small risk, but there is a risk. But we also need to be thinking about, kind of what else can we do? So if a mom wants to say avoid medication during her first trimester, we want to make sure she's doing other kind of more alternative treatments but the main thing is that her depression is being addressed. So again, like I said, it's not something you just sort of blanket, oh yeah, we always want to do that. But we want to be making sure that we're appropriately evaluating the risk. But I think the bottom line for any of these things is untreated depression really isn't an option. It's harmful for the mother while she's pregnant and for her baby. It is also harmful for her relationship with her baby postpartum. So again, depression is very important. We want to make sure it gets treated.
Of course, and I understand that that this is an issue that needs to be known about and understood, but why do you think there's so much talk about it? Why is it all over the news? Why is the media all over depression and antidepressants and that sort of idea? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think there's been kind of a number of things. I mean, the most recent incident, of course, is that poor mom, suffering from postpartum depression, who actually was, just shot by police in Washington, D.C. as she was attempting to crash the barricades at the White House. And again, that kind of story in some ways sort of highlights this issue. I mean, it's a much more extreme example than what most mothers experience. But I think the other thing is, too, there have been some studies that have come out and, they have expressed some concern about risk. And again, like I said, we don't want to be ever casual about risk because, let's acknowledge there is some. But at this point, the FDA has actually come out and, having evaluated all the studies, has said, they really don't think that we have enough evidence to say don't, use medication, especially during that first trimester. But again, like I said, if a mother is very uncomfortable with that, I mean, she can work with her provider to possibly use alternative treatments, exercise, cognitive therapy, things that we know that are very effective for treating depression. And so, there are some other kind of ways to sort of approach this. But, medications in many cases can be life-saving for mothers. And that's the important piece we need to balance against that very, very, very small risk that there might be some problem with the baby after medication exposure. And again, like I said, we don't want to be casual, but we also need to balance that there's always risk. There's risk in any choice. And so what we need to do is pick the thing that is the least risk. But that's actually one of the things that's in the news is, all these scares without a lot of responses. And again, like I said, I think in some ways that sort of muddies the water and makes it hard. But all it takes is a few high-profile cases, and this stuff gets in the news and stays in the news for a while.
Good points, really good points. I think one thing that you said in there about risk and about how, the safety and health of mothers and babies is so wrapped up in that emotional and mental health state of that mother caring for herself and for her baby and for her family. And hearing you say that, yes, there's risk in taking medication, but there's great risk in not taking it as well, and you have to balance that out. And the idea is we cannot ignore that risk. That is a really important take-home message, and I really thank you for telling us that today. And to all of our listeners, I would really encourage you to register for Gold Perinatal Care and listen to this presentation. We've got some really important messages that we'd like to share with you. Please feel free to head over to our website at www.goldperinatal.com. That's GOLDPERINATAL.com. Our live conference starts on November 18th, and we do have a free keynote presentation for you on November 12th. So please head over to our website for more information about that. Kathleen, I really appreciate your time. I'm very much looking forward to your presentations because you're giving more than one presentation at Gold Perinatal Care. And thank you so much for your time today.
Well, I appreciate being here, and looking forward to your conference.